everyone, no matter where you are, no matter what time it may be. I hope y'all are doing well out there. As always, I want to thank you guys for spending time with me here today. Taking time out of your day to listen to this old hillbilly tell these encounters. I went out early this morning for a couple hours and got some drone footage for you guys. I'm still learning, so if it's a bit shaky, I apologize. I'm trying to get some practice in before the fall hits. That's when things around here get really, really beautiful. Anyways, I hope you enjoy. Tonight's lineup takes us onto some of the most famous trails in the United States. The Appalachian, the Pacific Crest, the Long Trail, the Continental Divide. These are places people dream about hiking, places that see thousands of visitors every year. But for a handful of unlucky folks, those same ridges and switchbacks turned into something out of a nightmare. As I say sometimes, these aren't quite campfire stories. Some of these encounters happened in broad daylight, right in the middle of the trail. Others struck in the dead of night when there was nowhere to run. Every one of them leaves the same chilling reminder. The deeper you go into the wild, the less control you really have. If you've had an encounter of your own and would like to share it here on the channel, reach out to me. Send me an email. I'd love to hear from you. My email address will be linked in the description below this video. Everyone lock in, and let's begin. Grab a drink, lock your doors and windows, hit the lights, and let's get started. Reels. I don't know how many of your encounter stories you've received that start out in broad daylight, but mine does. This wasn't in the middle of the night. It wasn't around some campsite. It was on the Appalachian Trail, somewhere in the Smokies. Sun out, people hiking just miles away. That's what makes this even more terrifying for me, because I can't even tell myself it was just the dark playing tricks. I was section hiking solo last May, doing 3 nights out. I'd left camp late that morning, pack strapped on, and I was maybe 6 or 7 miles into the day. The trail was quiet, except for the birds and the wind. That's when I noticed a weird sound. At first it was faint, but it continued to get closer. These were bipedal footsteps, and not echoes of my own. This was weight. Every time I stopped to take a drink of water, whatever it was would stop with me. Every time I'd start walking again, I'd hear it a few paces later, keeping time with my steps. I kept telling myself, okay, somebody's behind me, no big deal. But every time I'd glance back, the trail curved and dipped and no one was there. Not once. That was the first time my stomach tightened up, and I truly began to get extremely nervous. The trail started climbing into a ridge section, and that's where it got worse. The footsteps weren't on the trail anymore, they were just off to the side, paralleling me in the brush. Sometimes they would seem to get closer. I could hear them, but couldn't see anything. I could hear the faint breathing of something, and there was nothing there for me to see. I can't explain it. It's almost like this thing was invisible. I had no idea what I was going to do, but I was about to panic. The first thing that came to my mind was to yell out, "Hey, bear," the way that they tell you to. Nothing crashed away, nothing ran, it just stopped. Then it started up again when I moved. This is where it burned into me. I stopped dead still in the middle of the trail and turned my head slow toward the trees. And there it was. Just a glimpse, but it was enough. It was maybe 40 yards off. It was standing upright, and it was definitely not another hiker. This thing had extremely broad shoulders. It was dark black. It was almost blending with the bark. On top of that shape, the outline of ears, sharp, reminded me of the Egyptian god creature that Anubis, I think is the name. I stopped. I couldn't move. I was watching it, hoping it would resolve into a trick of the light or something my eyes were seeing that wasn't there. It didn't. It moved, it shifted, like it was adjusting its stance, and then it just went backward into the shade until it was gone. I told myself right then, just keep walking, just keep walking. I wasn't going to run. My instinct told me that would be the worst thing I could do. I tightened my straps and kept a steady pace, but those footsteps followed for at least another mile. Every time the wind would die, I could hear them. There was one moment where I thought it was about to come onto the trail. The brush rustled hard on my right side, and I swear I heard a low growl, but not the kind you hear from a normal dog or any type of canine. It was a lot heavier, much deeper. It was vibrating through the ground more than through the air. I just kept moving. I didn't know really what else I could do. I was kind of stuck. I didn't have a choice. I definitely wasn't going to try to stop and fight whatever this was. Of course, before all this happened, I'd heard all kinds of stories about weird creatures and people encountering these monsters of the woods. I never believed any of that stuff. But I tell you, I do now. I finally made it another half mile on. I hit a section where the trail widened out and the sun blasted down through a break in the canopy. And just like that, it was gone. No more footsteps, no more growls, just silence and my own ragged breathing from being panicked and thinking I was about to die. The worst thought to me was the thought of me disappearing in such a horrible manner, and no one ever knowing what truly happened. I finally made it to the next shelter. There were 2 hikers sitting there eating lunch. I must have looked pale or still freaked out because they asked if I was all right. I almost told them. Instead, I just said I thought I'd been shadowed by a bear. They just shrugged and said, "It happens out here." But it didn't feel like that. I've been in the woods enough to know what a bear sounds like when it's moving through the woods. This thing matched me step for step and stood tall enough to cast a man's silhouette with pointed ears. That was the longest night of my life. I set up camp with a group that evening, but I didn't sleep. Every time I would hear a noise, I would tense up, waiting for the inevitable. Every time the wind would shift in a different direction, I would almost swear I could smell musky dog drifting past. I made it out the next day, safe enough, but I haven't been able to shake this memory. The sound of those footsteps stopping when I stopped is something that continues to echo in my brain. That wasn't random. That thing stalked me. It was deliberate. It could have ended me, that's a fact, but it chose for some reason not to. I'm not sure what I feel or think about these creatures. I'm at a loss. L.H., North Carolina. Reels. This happened back in 2019 when a buddy and I were section hiking the PCT through the Sierra. I wasn't even planning on writing this down, but I have been listening to a few of your uploads. I realized that what we experienced fits right in. We'd been on the trail for about a week, moving north through the high passes. It was early afternoon, maybe 2 o'clock, bright sun overhead. We'd stopped at this creek crossing to refill bottles and eat a snack before the next climb. Nothing unusual, just your standard midday break. That's when my buddy froze mid-sentence and started staring over my shoulder. I turned, and up on the switchback above us, maybe 70 yards away, there was something, a figure. Now this wasn't a person in a bright jacket with trekking poles. This was dark, something huge, and it wasn't moving like a hiker. It was just there, watching us. Its arms hanged extremely low, almost to the ground, way past the knees. Its chest was pretty broad, and even though the sun was glaring, you could make out the outline of a head that did not look like a normal animal. It was too narrow up top, but with these points on either side that looked like ears. Neither of us saying a word. We just sat there. But we were thinking the same thing. This thing, it didn't move. It didn't wave. It didn't call down. This wasn't a human. It just stood on the switchback. After maybe 10 seconds, it stepped to one side into the rocks and disappeared out of sight. As we were rushing to pack, I remember my buddy saying something. He was trying to cope the best he could. He said maybe it's just another hiker that got off trail. That's not a hiker. Hikers can't vanish into sheer rock face cliffs without making a sound. I get it. His brain was in survival mode. I understood. As we started up the climb, maybe 15 minutes later, we were hit with a strong, sharp, and unmistakable smell. Urine. And it was fresh. It's the kind of smell you'd get if a big dog had just marked its territory, except this wasn't by a tree or a bush. It was right in the middle of that switchback, where we had to step over it. The thing must have had a bladder the size of a 5-gallon bucket. We both stopped for a split second, just looked at each other. There was nothing left to say. We both saw it. So we just stepped past it and kept moving. But that smell, it was so strong I could taste it in my mouth. It was disgusting. The rest of the afternoon we kept catching glimpses. A shadow shifting behind a rock or a boulder. Something ducking low when the trail would turn. It was always just far enough away that we couldn't be sure. But the feeling of being watched was completely overwhelming. I've never felt fear like that. By the time we hit camp that evening, we were both shook. My buddy wanted to joke about it. Maybe it was a bear standing weird. Maybe it was injured. Bears don't stand upright for that long, and they don't leave a puddle of urine smack in the middle of the trail like a warning sign. We never told anyone else that we saw on the trail. It just felt like one of those things people would laugh at. And they probably will when I type this out if you read it. But I'll say this. Whenever I hike now, I pay a lot more attention to my surroundings and what's behind me. I don't linger at switchbacks, because whatever these things are, they definitely don't want us trespassing in the woods. It marked that trail. It was making sure we knew that that stretch of woods belonged to it. And I won't argue. Anonymous, California. Heads up, legends. This next one is about a 10 on the terrifying meter. Buckle up. This is a wild one. Hello, Reels. This happened to me 3 falls ago up in the White Mountains. If telling this keeps somebody else from making the same mistake I did, then it's well worth me putting it out there. I'm not a tent guy. I like hammocks. They're lighter, quicker, less fuss. I was up on a ridge section of the Appalachian Trail mid-September doing a solo 2-night hike. The weather was good, skies were clear, and I thought it would be an easy, relaxing trip. The first night was uneventful. I strung the hammock between 2 trees, ate a little freeze-dried meal, and turned in. Somewhere in the night, I woke up to the sound of something pacing. That's the only way I can describe it. Footsteps moving just off the trail. When I stopped breathing to listen, they stopped. When I shifted in the hammock, I heard them again. I shined my headlamp but saw nothing. I did catch the glint of eyes way too high off the ground before they blinked out. I told myself it had to be a deer, rolled over, and forced myself back to sleep. The second night, though, was very different. I decided to rig up some makeshift alarms. I had some paracord tied to some empty soup cans with some rocks in them for an extra bit of protection against wildlife getting too close. I strung in a little perimeter around the hammock. My thinking was, if it was an animal nosing around, the noise would give me a warning and probably scare it off. I fell asleep, a bit uneasy, boots inside the hammock, knife at my hip. I have no idea any time frames or what time of night this happened. But when it happened, I woke up because I wasn't on the tree anymore. The hammock was yanked hard, and suddenly I was slammed against the ground and still wrapped up like a cocoon. Before I could even try to move, I was being dragged. Fast, rough, hard. My back was hitting rocks. I had dirt in my mouth. I couldn't even get my arms free to even try to fight. Then, as quick as it started, I was just dropped, and I heard something huge huff or blow out air from its lungs very close to me. Then it took off, super fast through the trees. When I finally ripped my way out of the hammock, I was shaking so hard I could barely hold the light. The part that doesn't make any sense to me, none of my alarms went off. Nothing was tripped. Not a single can clanged. Whatever it was managed to grab me without touching any of them. That tells me one thing. It had been watching me the whole time. It watched me set up those trips. It knew where they were. There's no other explanation. There's no way I could get out of there in the dark. It was too dangerous. The rest of the night, I just sit there with my back to a tree, holding my knife. I tried to save my headlamp, so I left it off as much as I could stand it. I could hear it circling, sometimes growling, sometimes just silence so heavy it pressed against my ears and made them pop and ring. There is one noise I heard, and I swear it vocalized. This wasn't a howl or a bark or a growl. It was something close to a word. Way too close to be comfortable. Daylight. I didn't think it would finally come, but it did. I packed my stuff up and got moving. My hammock was shredded. The straps were cut clean like they'd been sliced with a razor blade. The ground where I'd been dropped was wet, and it smelled like urine. To be honest, I can't even tell you if it was from the creature or from me myself. Everything is a bit of a blur. I hiked until I found a ranger station. I told him everything. To my surprise, he didn't laugh. He wrote down the details, took my GPS coordinates, and said he'd go check it out. Later that day, him and another officer took me back up there. They saw what I saw, the shredded hammock, the cut straps, and that same nasty smell was still lingering in the area. The ranger even said that's not a dog, when he got a whiff of it. But when more officials got involved, the tone quickly changed. Deputies, a trooper, they asked me about drinking, drugs, if I was under a lot of stress. They suggested maybe it was a bear or someone pranking me. They told me flat out not to spread silly rumors that could scare people off the trail. One of them even leaned close and said, "You didn't see what you think you saw." The thing is, I never said the word Dogman to them. I just described what I heard and what I smelled and what happened. And the glimpse of the eyes that were amber and higher than an animal should be. The harder I insisted, the more they tried to shut me down, like they were more worried about panic than about what actually happened to me. I walked out of there with the creepiest feeling, not just about what dragged me, but about the way those officials looked at me, like they knew, like they had heard this story before, and their job wasn't to fix the problem, but to make sure no one else talked about it. I don't use hammocks anymore. I don't hike alone anymore. And I'll never forget the sound of that breathing noise right next to my face, or the way the urine smell stuck to the ground where that thing left me. Anonymous, New Hampshire. I run trails, not competitively, just something I do to keep sane. I've been on the long trail in Vermont dozens of times, and nothing bad has ever happened. Until last summer, that is. It was early in the afternoon, maybe around 3 or 4 p.m. It was a clear, beautiful day. The trail was dry, and I had about 5 miles to knock out before heading back to the trailhead. I had headphones with me, but I wasn't using them. I like to hear the woods when I run. That's probably the only reason I caught it. Please, people, don't wear earbuds while in the woods. It's not a good idea. I was about 2 miles in when I started hearing something behind me. At first it just blended in with my own footfalls. But after a while I realized there was a second rhythm back there. Not quite in sync with me, but very close. I slowed down. I heard it slow. I stopped. Dead silence. Then I heard a stick snap, and it broke just off the trail. I wanted to believe it was another runner, or maybe a small wildlife critter, so I picked up the pace again. Within 30 seconds, the sound was back. This time it sounded closer. Whatever it was running when I ran, stopping when I stopped. It was definitely trying to keep its presence unnoticed. It makes my skin crawl just thinking about this again. I decided to test it. I cut hard left off the trail through the brush. I'm not quiet when I do that, but this thing followed and I could hear it bulldozing through the undergrowth. Heavier than me, faster than me, keeping pace no matter where I turned. That's when total fear took over. I took off full speed, and as I did, I heard something that made my chest lock up. I could hear panting. Not like a person out of breath. This was wet, deep animal panting right on my back. I risked one glance over my shoulder, and that's the image that will, I assume, forever be burned into my brain. A tall figure bursting through the trees, walking, running upright, but ears sticking up like a wolf. The eyes were amber and glowing, and they were right behind me. Then I tripped. I went down hard, and when I finally got back up, it wasn't in my sight anymore. It was gone. But I wasn't about to stick around. I took off again until I hit the trail. I didn't stop until I saw the parking lot through the trees. I sat in my car for a good half hour. When I finally turned the key and looked in the rearview mirror, I swear I saw movement at the edge of the trees. That same dark shape standing still, watching. I've run that trail for years. I haven't been back after that, but I did run it numerous times. Running was supposed to clear my head, but now every time I lace up shoes, I just can't bring myself to go back out there. This thing has taken something from me that I can't get back. That is unforgivable in my book. Say what you want about these things. Good, evil, mischievous, feeds on fear. Whatever makes you feel better, I suppose. But I'll be truthful. I don't think any of us know jack diddly about what these things are. But I can tell you, they are real, believe that or not. D.R. Vermont. Reels. My guy. Most of the stories you read end with someone barely making it out alive, but mine isn't anything like that. I wasn't chased or attacked. What happened to me was quieter, and in a way, in my opinion, that bothers me even more than if it would have came after me, violently. 2 summers ago, I was out on the Continental Divide Trail in Colorado with 2 friends. We'd done a 4-day loop and were heading back toward the trailhead on the last afternoon. Spirits were high, packs were feeling lighter, just a normal end of the trip mood. The last stretch was all downhill through some open country, a few switchbacks cutting back and forth across the slope. We were maybe a mile from the parking lot when I got that feeling, the one where the hairs on your arms rise for no reason. I didn't say anything at first. Then one of my friends asked, "Do you feel like we're being watched?" That is when I stopped, because I hadn't said a word about what I was feeling. We took off again, kept moving, faster, picked up the pace. Every few bends I would look back, but I never saw anything, or at least I thought there was nothing there. When we finally reached the flat near the lot and turned to look back up at the ridge we'd just come down, that's when I saw it. It was a dark figure silhouetted against the sky. It was standing right on one of the switchbacks near the top, standing upright, still, very tall, very broad. This wasn't another hiker. This wasn't human at all. And even from that distance you could see the points on the head. Definitely ears. We all went silent. It didn't move. It didn't shift. Neither did we. We all just stood there, staring at each other, like we were frozen in time. We finally all bailed and loaded into the car as fast as we could. I was driving, and as we pulled out, one of my friends rolled the window down to yell something. I don't even remember what. That's when it happened. A howl rolled down off that ridge. This was an insane sound to hear in real life. Someone can try to explain this, but there's no way you could understand. It was deeper. It was long. You could tell this was carried with a weight in it that would make your entire chest vibrate. We drove the rest of the way in complete silence. None of us wanted to admit what we'd just seen or what we'd heard. But the whole ride home, the thought stayed there. It didn't chase us. It didn't try to stop us. It just walked us out. Sometimes I wonder if that's the whole point. Like it was making sure we left its space, and that we knew it could have come closer if it chose to. I've done a lot of hiking since then. I won't allow it to keep me from something I enjoy doing. But every time I go out there, I am vigilant. And if I feel eyes on me, that's the first thing that comes to my mind is that figure up on that ridge. I know then that it's time to get out. Be safe while out there, Reels. It's not a safe place, especially alone at night. I love the channel. I love the content. Keep doing what you're doing. You are helping more people than you realize. Anonymous, Colorado. Friends, legends, family. That's gonna do it for this upload. 5 encounters from some of the most well-known trails in the country. The kind of places that people hike every single day thinking they're safe. And yet time and time again, we hear about these things that move in step with you. Things that watch from the ridges, and sometimes things that get a whole lot closer than that. What sticks with me about these stories is how ordinary they start out. Just a run, just a water break, just the last mile to the trailhead. And then in an instant, the whole mood changes. The forest goes quiet, the air gets heavy, and suddenly you realize you're not alone anymore. I want to thank you guys for hanging out with me tonight. If you enjoyed this upload, make sure to like, share, and leave a comment down below. Let me know which of these encounters hit you the hardest. The one for me is definitely the hammock. If you've got a story of your own, send it in. Again, my email is in the description of this video. Everyone stay safe out there on the trails. Take care of yourselves, and always trust that uneasy feeling in your gut, because sometimes it's not just the woods playing tricks on you. Sometimes it's something real. I love each and every one of you. Until next time, my friends, watch over your loved ones, keep your head on a swivel, and as always, good night.